So many family businesses neglect the issues, keep those issues hidden. They avoid them. And in the process, what they're doing is they're avoiding the opportunities to grow and improve and strengthen the relationships. Over communicating, getting to the root of the issues, solving it, having healthy conflict in the organization is the key to strengthening those relationships. It's the key to greater love, a greater legacy, and a better lifestyle. Strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle in your family business. This is Fearless Family Business. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fearless Family Business Show. My name is Adam Hill, and I'm really glad you're here today. Because today we're going to dig into those issues that keep you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that wake you up in the cold sweat in the middle of the night, worrying about your business, worrying about your family, worrying about everything going on in the world. All of those driven by the issues that just seem to consume our brains. And today, I want to talk about some effective ways in which we can approach the biggest issues in our family businesses, the biggest problems that plague us, and help us to navigate those so we can find lasting solutions and make those issues go away forever. Fortunately, there's some proven concepts I'm going to share with you, and how they can apply to family business. I'm going to share with you some of the EOS tools that we use to help businesses to approach those issues and solve them, make them go away forever. And there's no doubt that all of us who are entrepreneurs, anybody who owns, runs, or works in a business, is experiencing issues. We talk about the idea within EOS that entrepreneurs and leaders of businesses, and this is true for family businesses as well, are constantly wrestling with about 137 issues simultaneously, just everything hitting them from all sides. In fact, all of those issues float to the top. So the leader of the organization is going to feel them if they're not solved or if there's no procedure to solve them. And that is certainly true for family businesses. We've got the added complexities of family dynamics, of managing different types of people, and trying to stay sustainable for the sake of a legacy and lifestyle of the family businesses. So how can you manage that strengthening of love, legacy, and lifestyle while you're dealing with all these issues? In a lot of ways, if it becomes overwhelming, it doesn't become fun anymore. So that's why we have to systematize the way that we approach those issues and solve them. Now, I'll share kind of a little bit about before learning a lot of the EOS process and how to approach that key component of issues. I really struggled with this one a lot, and this was just by the simple nature of working in a family business. We found that a lot of the issues that came up were essentially the same issues, and we would circle around those issues. We would discuss them we would discuss them and discuss them and discuss them, rarely ever solving anything. We wouldn't ever really get to the root of what the issue was, and we wouldn't be able to really walk out with a plan of how to solve that issue. And the result of that was that the problems that would come into those meetings, or the problems that would come up, the issues that would come up without getting solved, they would become my problems. They would no longer be on the shoulders of the person who brought them to our attention, but they would become mine as the leader of the organization. And I don't know if that resonates with you. If you're running a business, if you're leading a team, or you're an entrepreneur, and people are bringing issues to you, and there's no controllable mechanism or procedure for how to manage those issues or solve them, and they don't go away, they become yours, right? Does that resonate? Well, that's the thing, and that's why it feels like we're always wrestling with so many different issues at once. When in reality, I think there's an illusion there, because we're thinking we're wrestling with all these different issues, when in reality, we can really condense those issues down into maybe 22, 23 different issues that have been the primary issues in the history of business. And I would even argue, I would dilute that further, or I would narrow that further down. And I would say that that really the root of all issues is people. You can argue that at the top of every issue is a person or people that are responsible for it, that own it. And so that's the one key like starting point I want to start with when it comes to tackling those key issues in your organization is first find out who's responsible for it. And this, I do want to be cautious here. I don't want to confuse responsibility for fault. Because a lot of times we could when we see an issue come up that is a wrench in our business or it is causing some pain, the first instinct is to either assign blame or become defensive, depending on which side of the equation you're on. You could be on the side that's delivering the issue or sharing the issue, and you get defensive about it because you don't want to be blamed for it. Or you could be on the side of the receiving side, and you're like, all right, whose head do I have to crush for this one, or whose neck do I have to choke for this one? And neither of those things get anywhere because then you just have a blame game of going back and forth. So responsibility is different than blame. Responsibility doesn't mean blame. Responsibility just means who's going to take ownership of that issue, who is going to own it and see it through to completion, to take control of it. So that's an important point to make is know that every issue is going to be rooted in a person and somebody has to be responsible for it. And I think that when we can start to look at these issues in a different way, when we can build a system around how we solve them, we can start to take the overwhelm away. That overwhelm that we feel like we're dealing with 137 issues all at once, and instead just take those issues and start to solve them, make them go away forever, start to delegate out the responsibilities for them. And you'll see that it's not as overwhelming anymore over time. It takes some time, but it is possible. So I want to kind of start here too. I mentioned a little bit about the illusion of these endless issues that you experience, when really in reality they're really rooted in just a small number of root causes that we need to get to the root of. But I want to first kind of touch on the different forms of issues that we experience. I think we experience issues that come into our business in a few different forms. And the first one we see is like the low hanging fruit. This is the kind of issue that is pretty easy to solve. It's a slam dunk. It just gets in it falls into your lap. You see this issue, there's an obvious solution, and you're like, well, yeah, just do that. And then, and then it's agreed upon, and then we move, and then we solve the issue and we move on. That's like a high five moment. Everything feels great. You get that little dopamine hit for solving an issue, and it was super easy. I wish there were more of those, but oftentimes when you're leading an organization from the top, you're going to get the bigger issues. You're not going to get a lot of the low-hanging fruit issues. Those are going to tend to be solved at maybe the if you're delegating appropriately at the management levels or lower levels of the organization. Another issue that type of issue you may run into, and this may be more frequent, is what I would term as like the deja vu kind of issue. These are issues that just keep popping up. You think you might have solved them at one time or another. They're really annoying issues. They come in and you're like, what? What's the solution here? You work for a while, you think you come up with a solution, you leave, and it comes back to bite you. Have you ever experienced that where you just keep getting resurging issues over and over again? It's the same thing, and you're like, why are we dealing with this again? I mean, maybe it's an RPRS issue. Maybe you've had a person in your organization that you're having issues with. Maybe they don't meet your core values, and you're having that discussion with your leadership team, and you have a plan of action to talk to that person, and it doesn't get resolved, and then it goes away for a while, and it comes back. If you ever have that, that's a deeper issue. And when those deja vu issues come up, what that tells you is that you're not digging deep enough to get to that root cause. You're really not getting to the root of what that real issue is, and you're letting the real issue go because that issue keeps coming back. And so when you have a deja vu issue, even though it's annoying, even though it's a pain, there's some lessons you can learn from that. There's some indicators in there that if it comes back, you need to ask first the question, okay, well, we already solved this last time. What are we missing? What are we not digging into? What is the real root of this issue? Then you could start to dig deeper and find a different root. Remember, if you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So if it's coming back, try something different. Dig a little deeper. Try to get to the root cause. And then the final type of issue that I'm gonna bring up to you that we run into are the types of issues that we avoid. And a lot of times these are the issues that are keeping you up at 3 a.m., that are waking you up at 3 a.m. in that cold sweat. They're the issues that we are putting off, likely because we don't want to have the difficult conversation, likely because they stem from fear, like we're afraid of what the solution might be, likely because we're afraid of the implications, or we're afraid of breaking some artificial harmony that we think is holding the company up at this moment. That's common in family businesses. In many family businesses, it's common to have a level of artificial harmony in the business that that makes it feel that we want to maintain, that we think we are keeping things peaceful and serene, when in reality, under the surface, there's some festering issues that are coming up that we're not resolving because we're afraid of what might come up. And I would imagine that if you're running a family business and a lot of issues that are keeping you up, that there's some things that you're just avoiding. What are the issues that you're avoiding? This is where courage comes into play. And this is where the key to really, really great companies comes in. Really great companies get really great at solving issues at the root, making them go away forever so that they don't come back. Really great companies uh, build a culture where people feel comfortable, where people feel free to raise their hand and call out the issues as they come up, to courageously bring them forward and go into the dark forest. Great companies have a courageous foundation, that there's a bravery, that they go there, that they're willing to go into that dark forest, so that and avoid the temptation to blame or feel defensive, and instead work together to find the solution for the greater good. One of the key things that I want to share in that courage is not a courage in the sense that you need to go in there and fight it out. And a lot of times maybe you will. Maybe you'll have to debate and have a healthy debate, making sure it stays healthy. And there's a lot of courage that goes into that. Uh, but it's how you position the issue in front of you. I say in front of you because a lot of times, if there's a contentious issue or problem that's in the organization, and what leads to that blame or defensiveness is we will be sitting at a table and we will put the issue between us. I will put the issue between me and my adversary, or the person with whom that issue is contested. And we will have it between us, and we'll be pushing the issue, and he'll be pushing the issue, and we'll be pushing the issue back and forth, and it'll be a battle. But instead, it's different. We're putting the issue in front of us. And if we put the issue in front of us and we say, how do we see this issue, either move through it or move beyond it so that we can go farther and resolve this issue, because this is an obstacle to where we want to go. That's the question we need to ask, is we work together to solve that issue. And that takes courage. Courage as that foundational piece. And so that's kind of the first thing that great companies do to solve key issues. The second thing that they do is they prioritize really well. They can prioritize the most important issues. Now, when I mentioned those three types of issues that I just brought up, the low-hanging fruit, the deja vu issues, the issues that you're avoiding, a lot of times if we have a list of issues, and I'll talk about that in a second, but if we have a list of issues on our issues list, and we have a lot of low-hanging fruit issues, we might just go to that one and just say, yeah, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that. And we'll avoid the issues that are the avoided issues, or the issues that are the deja vu issues, because they're harder to solve, or they're more difficult. Again, it takes courage. We need to prioritize those well. Which are the issues that need to be solved this week in order to move the needle for the organization? Go deep, go there. Don't be afraid to jump into those key issues that are going to make a key difference, because that's going to make the difference for your organization. And then the final thing that great companies do when they're solving issues is they look at solving the issue at the root. They dig deep in solving the issues. They just get really great at solving the issues and making them go away forever. so that they don't become deja vu issues, so that they don't become the issues that we just avoid and put on the side so we can maintain this artificial harmony and lose sleep at night. No, they get really great at solving those key issues. And so now I want to share kind of a little bit about the EOS approach to that prioritization and that solving of key issues goes into the tools that EOS uses to help to solve those issues at the root. So one of the first things that we want to do is we want to create a culture in the organization. No matter how big your organization is, if it's just you in the organization, or if it's 150 people or 250 people in the organization, you want to really get really good at helping everybody to be honest with what those issues are and to be willing to be open and honest about bringing them up. Building that culture of openness and honesty so that those issues come out freely is so vital to being able to set those issues up to be prioritized and solved, because then those individuals who are willing to call them out, to open themselves up and call that issue out and get it onto an issues list, we can then start to prioritize that. And if you can do those two things really well, be free to call those issues out and then prioritize them really well, well, then that creates a culture where those issues are not becoming as a long-term obstacle for the growth of the organization. You're actually using those issues to fuel you. And another great thing about the issues, about bringing up those key issues, is that the same people that aren't afraid to bring up the issues that might be hard or challenging or difficult to talk to are the same people too that are going to bring up the ideas and the opportunities and the things that you might be able to capitalize on that contribute to your growth. Those come from the same essential part of our DNA. Is if we're seeing problems, we're also seeing opportunities. If you could reframe it that way, the more problems that come up, the more opportunities and ideas are going to come up as well. So welcome those. Build it into your culture where you call those things out and they get onto that list, and then you can prioritize them, and then you can start to tackle the issues that are going to move the needle every week. That's going to be the driver for growth. So many family businesses neglect the issues, keep those issues hidden. They avoid them. And in the process, what they're doing is they're avoiding the opportunities to grow and improve and strengthen the relationships. I will tell you, over communicating, getting to the root of the issues, solving it, having healthy conflict in the organization is the key to strengthening those relationships. It's the key to greater love, a greater legacy, and a better lifestyle. That's just the honest truth. It may not feel like it. It is counterintuitive to think that getting into some level of conflict over these issues is going to strengthen relationships, is strengthen your company, but it really does. Especially if you're looking at building a healthy culture. And you have to depend on that, because if it doesn't, well, then you're not going to have a healthy culture in the first place. Because again, it goes back to the people issues of do you have the right people in the organization? Are they able to get along? And that's a deeper issue as well. And then the second part about that, once you're able to prioritize those issues really well, once you're able to call out those issues and you've built that culture of issue prioritization, issues calling out, you can then start to and you can then start to get to the next step, which is how you solve those issues. EOS uses a tool called Identify, Discuss, and Solve. It's the issue solving track, and it's a really valuable tool. And it's very simply, you work to identify the root cause of the problem, and that is step one. You wanna dig deep into the root of that issue. So you have an issues list, you prioritize the issues on that issues list, you dig into that first issue, and you really get to the root of what that issue is. Because a lot of times, especially if we're avoiding the issues, especially if they're deja vu issues that come up over and over again, a lot of times what we write down on that issues list is not the root cause of that issue, is not at the root. It's not really, that's why we have to work so hard to identify it. And then, and there's a few techniques I'll talk about and how to really dig in and identify that. Then the second step is to briefly discuss that issue. And this is where a lot of people get caught up. I mentioned earlier in this story that when we used to solve issues, we used to We used to just discuss issues like crazy. We used to talk about them, circle around them as much as possible. Talk about how our idea was the most important idea, or this idea was the most important idea. Repeat that about 1 billion times and never get to the root of anything. No, we just want to have that brief discussion about it. Make sure we're all on the same page. Is this the real root cause of the issue? Anything else you want to add? Any other questions? Then you can move on to this third step, which is solve. Solving that issue means just making it go away forever. And this is where you attach a solution to that root cause. This is where courage comes into play, my friends. Courage is so vital in this step because what it's going to require is that it's going to require that a decision be made and that action be taken on that decision and that somebody take responsibility for making that decision and taking that action. And that's going to lead to change, which change is sometimes one of the scariest things in organizations, but it can also be the most exciting. It's also what helps to make those issues go away forever. When we take action on a decision that is a solution to a problem, that is the way to make that issue go away permanently. So that sounds all really easy to say. You identify, you discuss, you solve. It's super, super simple, right? Not in practice. A lot of times it's really, really hard to get into that rhythm of not politicking or discussing the heck out of issues. I mean, we still struggle with it. But the point is that you, and this point is not to strive for perfection on this. In fact, when I talk about the majority of issues, if not all of the issues in the history of the world, are rooted in a single issue that is people. I don't say that in a way to say that we should be assigning blame or shame or anything like that. In fact, I say it to imply that the imperfection around people is part of the most beautiful thing, because then we can work together to resolve that imperfection. It gives us an opportunity too to give ourselves grace, to understand that we're not perfect, and that's okay. And that if we can just make peace with the fact that people are at the root cause of all of the issues, we can move forward more effectively with those solutions and take that action and make those decisions, take that action with more courage, and be willing to see the change and the positive change that exists. That's what great companies do to solve those problems. So let me give you a few practical tools and tips to make that to make that issue solving track a little smoother, and a little more effective, so that you can avoid some of the traps like falling into the blame game or the politicking or the over discussing or just straight up just that fear or that anxiety you feel about digging about the conflict, making sure that conflict is healthy. So one of the first tools and techniques you may have heard of, it's called the 5 whys. Just ask the question why for every part of that issue from the starting point. If the issue that is called out is we have the capacity to make 100 widgets, but we're only making 50 per day. Well, ask the question why. Why is that the case? Well, because we are short-staffed this week and blah, blah, blah. Well, why? Well, because and it goes deeper. It goes deeper until you start to get to more of a root cause. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 5, maybe it can be 7 whys, but just keep asking why until you get to a reasonable root cause to that issue. And that helps you to better identify that issue. Like I say, act like a 5-year-old. 5-year-olds ask why all the time. We get annoyed by it. We should really listen to it and start to think more clearly. And hopefully you never get to a point where you said, just because I said so, because that's not healthy either. But asking why, keep asking why until that real issue surfaces. And a lot of times you'll know that real issue is surfaced because it'll hit you in such a way. It'll kind of break your heart in some ways. And you're like, oh, okay, that might be the issue. And then along those same lines, the second tip I'm gonna talk about comes from one of my favorite episodes of Ted Lasso. If you've never seen Ted Lasso, please stop this podcast right now and go watch Ted Lasso. It is actually one of the greatest television shows, masterclasses on leadership in the world, and I think it can apply to family business as well. But my favorite episode is where where Ted Lasso is playing darts with a another owner of a different football club named Rupert, and they're playing darts, and I think Rupert's getting a little cocky about how great his dart game is or whatever. But Ted Lasso talks about this idea of how he's always tried to practice the philosophy of being curious, not judgmental. And I thought that that was a powerful lesson because a lot of times, sometimes our first instinct when we hear something that hits us the wrong way is to judge it, is to attack back, to blame, to push back, instead of getting curious. And in a lot of ways, if we're seeing a conflict happen, if our instinct is to react and push back, we should instead get curious because that will help us to stay grounded in the moment, not descend into animosity, but also to really start to get to the root of where that real issue lies. Um, it really does help to go deeper and to understand more, to show empathy and compassion for the situation, and show commitment to an end result. It's it is really a way of just of showing that compassion, and it's a way of getting to more putting that issue in front of you rather than putting that issue between you. Ask questions, get curious. So if you find that the discussion gets to putting the issue between you and you're getting into blame, start asking some questions. And I know why is a question, but you might dig deeper too. You might hear something, you might say, well, that's interesting. Say some more about that because I'm curious to know why this or why that. Curiosity is a powerful tool to get to the root of issues and find solutions. And again, if you want to make lasting change, that final tip that I'm going to share with you is you have to have the courage to make that decision. There's really no way around it. This is a practice of courage. It's a practice of taking these issues, these complexities that feel uncomfortable, because anything that disrupts the patterns that we have are going to feel uncomfortable. And in that process, we have to embrace that discomfort. And that our ability to embrace that discomfort, to breathe into it, to work into it, is an act of courage. Making the decisions to act and change, and then acting on those decisions to change, to move, to put ourselves in a different way and to grow. Those are acts of courage. So please practice courage when you're going through this issue solving. So all of that to say that the issues that come up, the issues that keep you up at 3 a.m, they don't have to be debilitating for your organization or your life. They really don't. The second that you're able to, I'll tell you from my personal experience, the second that I was able to start being honest with those issues, start getting curious about them, start practicing the courage of coming up with effective solutions for them, is the second my life became better. I not only implemented this practice in our business, in our business, and ultimately led to healthy discussions and built trust within our team. That's another great benefit. It will build trust, and where trust doesn't exist, those folks will fall off. They will opt out for themselves. But you will build trust the more honest you can get. But the more honest we got, the better our organization got. But I also used these tools in my personal life, in my relationships, in my relationship with my wife. And we were able to improve our communication, our honesty, and really, really strengthen ourselves in our relationships. And it helped our relationship to evolve as well. And so I almost guarantee that if you have issues that you're avoiding, if you have issues that keep coming up, that they're deja vu issues, that just keep coming up in your organization or in your life, you may want to start asking more questions. You may want to start digging a little deeper into those. Ask a few more whys. Look at them a little more differently and start to have the courage to go into the dark forest of where the root cause of that issue really is. Because in the midst of that dark forest, you'll find a beautiful garden where the solution lies, and it'll make that issue go away forever. So go out there, solve some key issues, my friends, make your organizations better. And if you'd like to learn more about this process, please reach out to me. I'm happy to get on a call with you and your team to help you walk through some of the other tools of EOS and how they've worked to improve my life and how they can improve yours. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Fearless Family Business Show. If you're enjoying this show, please thumbs up this episode and subscribe wherever that subscribe button is. And you'll get more family business education and insights in your inbox. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, your mom, your dad, a second cousin, whomever you think might benefit from hearing this show. And if you're in a family business and you've got a great story to share, contact me because I would love to see if you'd be a great fit for this show. I'd love to interview you. Or if you're struggling in your family business to find your unique identity or voice, or you need an injection of new life into your family business, I'd also love to hear from you. I'd love to learn more about you, and I'd love to see if I can help. Simply email me at adam@fearlessfamilybusiness.com, and we'll get you connected to the right place. Together, we can elevate the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle we all experience in our family businesses. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.